Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is March 23rd, 2021, and today we are wrapping up part 2 of the Shed series with Mitch Reetz from Michigan. Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and today is episode 152. And like I said before, we are wrapping up part 2 of the Shed series that we've done this year. It's something a little different. I haven't really done this in the past, but it's just one of those things. It's current events. Basically, everybody's still out there looking for sheds. I think a lot of people are probably winding down. Just according to social media, I haven't seen a lot of people out there still finding them. But I think now in a lot of areas, time is where people are getting out even more, just because I know here in Michigan, I mean, it's been 70 the last 3 days, and the weather has been really good, and getting out there and getting your winter legs off and putting some miles on. So I do know people are out there looking, but by the looks of social media, it looks like a lot of people are kind of starting to wind down as well. So we'll see. But I recently had one of my good buddies, Mitch Reetz, on, and the reason why I wanted to get Mitch on is because Mitch is probably the best shed hunter I personally know. I've known Mitch quite a while now, and Mitch has just got a knack for finding sheds, and he does it in Michigan here. I don't know of anybody other than Brent Todd. He does amazing finding sheds as well. But those guys, I put those guys at the same level. I mean, they're real close to each other. I think Brent's found 70 or 80 sheds just in Michigan this year so far. So he is up there with Mitch. I mean, they're right there. But Mitch, I don't know, man. He's just got a knack for it. I've been out shed hunting with him a couple times, and he just finds sheds like crazy. I don't understand it. It's what I don't know. I honestly think he was put out here to just find sheds, really. I don't know. He'd probably disagree, but he really enjoys it. That's the thing. He just finds out where the deer are, just knows, what to look for. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people think shed hunting could be really easy. You go out there and, you just walk around and you trip on them. Well, a lot of times it doesn't happen that way. And he's really methodical about it, though. Like a lot of, bow hunters, serious whitetail hunters out there, and how methodical they are with trying to get on whitetails. I feel like Mitch takes that same approach, but only on the shed hunting side. I mean, he does on the hunting side as well, but he's methodical on how he does it. He doesn't do it just to do it. I mean, he goes out and he's got a plan, and he executes that plan, and it shows. I mean, he finds 40, 50, 60 sheds here in Michigan a year, and it's pretty crazy. But with that being said, I'm going to get over to this interview with Mitch. Thank you, everybody out there, for the support. Thank you for the downloads and everything, and I'm going to get over this interview with Mitch. Welcome back to the Fall Podcast, and today we are doing episode 2 of the Shed Hunting series, and I've got a good buddy of mine here with me, Mitch Reetz. Mitch, this is your debut.
This is my podcast debut.
Your podcast debut. I appreciate you coming on, man. And the reason why everybody that's listening that I'm bringing Mitch on is because Mitch is probably the best shed hunter that I know. Reason being, because here in Michigan, it is very hard to find sheds if you don't have the perfect situation.
Yeah. And
you're finding, 30, 40 a year probably?
The last couple of years have been good, yep. Over 40.
So, I want to get into that a little bit today. I just did a podcast with a shed hunter from Ohio, Cody, and I thought it was cool to get his perspective, and then I want to get your perspective of it too, because he does it on a very high level, but he also does it in different states. I don't know if he's ever really shed hunted in Michigan, and I think it's difficult here, I would say. Would you say that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the age structure of deer around here, like, if we get 3 inches of snow, that could cover up most of the sheds that are laying on the ground around us anyways.
Yeah.
You go to Ohio, that's a little different. But
and we get quite a bit of snow all the time, so we're pushed. I feel like our shed hunting, I feel like every time like Whitetail Properties does their shed rally, we always have a pile of snow. So it's like, how do we partake in the the shed rally when everything's probably covered up?
Right. It is best when things thaw out, and I'll go when there's still snow on the ground, but March comes and the sun starts warming things up and the snow starts disappearing. That's when it gets best.
So before we do dive deep into this, kind of give everybody like just a brief rundown of you, who you are, that for everybody that's listening that doesn't know you. So kind of give that little intro.
Okay. Well, I'm Mitch Reetz. I'm from Central Michigan here. Grew up not far from Aaron here in near Mount Pleasant, and always grew up deer hunting. Similar situation to Aaron. I grew up hunting with my uncles and cousins, and we all stayed in the same camp and all hunted the same chunk of land, and everyone had their own blind, and this was my blind, that's your blind, and so that was my start. And through high school I spent a lot of time in the woods, probably more than I should have, and sat the same stand,
But that's how we grew up, though. It was like you have one stand, kind of, go hunt it.
And that's how you learn too. You got to be out there, and so that's how I grew up hunting. And then college came, and I still hunted a lot. And after I graduated from school here, I decided to take a job with an outfitter down in Pike County, Illinois, and that I think kind of took me to the next level of just understanding deer and their behaviors and how to be successful pursuing them, whether it's sheds or shooting deer in the fall.
And I agree with that too. Like, kind of getting out of Michigan helped me as well, because I feel like you see deer doing deer things more than we do here in Michigan, more in a year. Like you see these giant bucks and these I say giants, but then you see like these 130s and 140s that we don't get to see a lot around here doing big buck things, out there, like responding to calls and decoys and stuff like that. Like we don't get that.
We don't
get that. And that helped me out a ton as well. And I just feel like it accelerated the learning process. Now, to go back a little bit to talk about, before we get into the shed hunting, to talk about hunting and like growing up hunting in the same stand and kind of like your area, do you feel like that hindered your learning experience? And looking back now, you're like, my woodsmanship, I feel like would be so much farther along than what it should be or what it is because of that?
Yeah, I would say, like, looking back, like, I don't regret any of it by any means, but I would have liked to, especially when I had more free time, to go explore new spots and, maybe hit some public land, or at least spread my pressure out over everything that I could hunt. Because, there was a time when I could hunt behind my grandma's and hunt out to some places that I had permission on. And, sometimes I would just get stuck in that narrow, like, blinders
tunnel vision. Like,
this tree, I saw 10 deer out of this tree yesterday. I'm going to go there again, tomorrow morning, because today's morning was great. So.
Yeah, and we honestly, and I'm not going to speak for you, but you can elaborate a little bit. I didn't know any better, because what I was taught was, it's bait hunting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One stand, you enter one way, you exit one way. And then I would say in 2008 or 2009, it was when it was like started clicking, like, you got to do things a little differently, because I wasn't killing the bucks that I wanted to kill.
Right.
And then once I started doing, I've told the story on the podcast, and I've told you before, but like when I actually like was like, I need to move, like I moved a stand and then killed my biggest buck at the time, like, and it was a giant at the time. And I thought it was anyway. I was super stoked about it. And then it like clicked. That was like the light bulb moment. Like, okay, like gloves are off, like go do something different. Like think outside the box. You know?
Yeah, there was a time, like, I remember hanging stands, and like for at least a few years when I first started, like I hadn't killed a deer out of a stand that I'd hung. I'd always had, like, someone would say, "Yeah, you can hunt behind my place. Like, there's a stand over here and there's a stand over there." Like, so I would kind of start there and like, oh, hey, I'm seeing deer. Like, so it took me a while to even get into the like, how do I set up? How do I access? How do I prepare other than shooting my bow and being here before daylight? Like, how do I put the odds, in
your favor? Now, would you say? Did you ever, sit in those stands and kill a deer and then always, or did you ever ask yourself, like, why? Like, why did that deer do that? Why is this stand here? Like, did you ever ask yourself that and, like, learn that way?
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, it took me a while to get to that point of thinking. And I think really when I went out of state and started, like, doing it for a living and being just fully submerged in it all the time as far as, like, okay, we got to do food plots, we got to hang stands, even though it's, it's April, it's June, it's August, we were always focused on that. So that really helped me get a good idea of the whole, how it all comes together to give you the
full circle,
the best chance in the fall. And just seeing some of the stuff that we would get away with down in Illinois was very interesting. Crazy. And then to come back here, I would take stuff that I learned down there and come back here, and it'd be like, I can't hang a stand that open in Michigan. Sometimes we'd be like, we saw a deer here, this is down in Illinois. We saw this buck moving down this fence the night before. Let's go, we'd take a ladder, we'd lean it up against the first tree that looked good, and we'd throw a guy in it in the morning and he would kill. And it's like, you don't ever see that happen in Michigan. Yeah. So to actually see how something like that would work was beneficial. It helped.
I got you. Will you unzip your jacket a little bit? The cord is rubbing on that zipper. There you go.
I'll just take it right off.
Sorry, technical difficulties here. New podcaster over here.
Noob.
You might want to take a drink of that Busch Light too. You're getting parched, I think. No, I agree, and that was kind of something that like was eye-opening to me too. I mean, my first out-of-state hunt was in 2010. I think 2010. Like after I killed that buck, I was like, I want to go do some more. I want to experience some different things. I went to Northwest Ohio, flatter and a pancake, little woodlots here and there where I was at. Didn't see a lot of deer, standing corn. Didn't really learn much. But then in 2011. I really started learning more. 2012, I killed a really good deer here in Michigan with my bow. 2 days later in the same stand, I missed a bigger deer. So like things started clicking. Like I started getting on bigger deer and more encounters. And that's when like the why really started clicking for me. Like, why did this deer do this? Why did he decide to come in here at this time? And like, that's when it really started evolving for me. And then I got the job that I'm at right now. And then with Chris and Casey, like I'm at Casey's hip all the time, and he's hunted out of state his whole life. Like even when he was young, like we were a kid growing up in PA, they always traveled and went out of state. So he taught me a ton, and like learning hand in hand every day. We're hunting 60, 70, 80 days of fall. Every morning, every night, you see a lot of shit. And you see a lot of different scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
And you learn a lot. But, like, to your point, taking what you learned out in Illinois and bringing it back here, you kind of got to strip it down and be like, what is going to work? Like, try it, throw it at the wall. If it doesn't work, all right, we got to try something different. That was the big learning curve for me.
Yeah. I remember one time in Illinois, one morning I rattled in, it was at least 8 bucks. And I mean, it was like a buck tornado around me the whole morning. And then you come back here and do that in Michigan, and you'll see probably more tails, of deer.
Probably won't even
scared.
see deer.
Yeah, right. Or you'll get the little curious 6-pointer that you rattled in, yesterday morning kind of thing. And it was just very eye-opening to see how rattling worked. Like, decoys work, like, but it might not be relevant to where you're at,
right? In Illinois, I think it was 2011 or 12, one of those falls. Chris rattled. We have a stand. He named the old 28. He rattled in 28 different bucks in one day. Sat all
Jeez.
day, just rattled in 28 different bucks. And it was on a field edge. It was a point that came up into an ag field. And the timber around the ag was like a big drop off in a lot of area, or like basically the whole area. It was just a big drop off into like bottom timber. And he was up on top, rattled in 28 bucks in one day.
And that, like, you might go there the next day and not get the same results. So that's where, like, that why factor comes in. It's like, what time of year was it? What, was it a cold front coming in?
Right.
Was it the rut?
Yeah, what stage of the rut was it in? Like, all that kind of stuff matters, Well, we went down that rabbit hole, so that was good. I wanted to get that out. And so let's get into the shed hunting thing. So first question I got for you is, like, when did you really start taking, like, shed hunting as a passion? Like, when was it something that was like, I need to do this. This is something that I really, really enjoy.
So probably the first shed I found was just by happenstance, like most people, out at our, my dad's property, and it was a spike, and it'd been there for a couple of years, and it was like I just happened to look down.
A little closer to your mouth. Sorry, newbie over here. Keep going.
I just happened to look down, and there it was, and didn't think much of it, but took it and really, really liked it. And then, that was back in probably 2008. And then having worked in Illinois, I remember we would spend like a day just driving around, and I mean, my boss would see them from the truck, and it was
sheds.
Like, wow, this is, and we would just drive, the field edge through the lease or whatever, and it was like, this is crazy. I mean, like, you could look for your whole life in Michigan and not find half of these. And so that's when I kind of started getting the eye for it, as far as seeing them from a distance. And then I came back to Michigan and just took note of where I was seeing deer, throughout the winter, and, just started pursuing them and trying to find their antlers. And it definitely became a passion, though, when I saw how it worked in Illinois, and then came back here that first year, and I think I found like 7 of them here in Michigan.
That's pretty damn good.
I was like, oh, man, I can't wait to get back down to Illinois and do this again next year, because that's when I finally, figured out I was kind of good at it.
Yep.
And that next year we were driving around, and we were driving a CRP field that had been all matted down from the snow, and I saw one tine sticking up out of the CRP. And, when that happens, if you've shed hunted long enough, you'll find a couple like that. And it's like, you never really know what's under that grass. Well, I pull on it, and it was the G3 that was sticking up. The G2 was busted off, and it was the right side of probably a 140-inch 8-point. And that's when I was like, oh.
That's a big 8-pointer.
Oh, yeah. And it made, my 7 from Michigan the year before just look tiny. And that's when I was like, okay, I got to find a bigger one and a bigger one. And it's just like shooting bucks, you always got to go after the next one.
Yourself.
So,
yeah. So because would you say, stumbling over my words now, would you say that shed hunting is just as fun as like hunting in the fall to you, or even more fun?
Yeah, just as fun.
Yeah.
I would say it's just as fun. Basically, it's getting more popular each year.
Yep.
So right now it's kind of like I consider the good old days of shed hunting. Like, I don't think I'll be finding 40 sheds a year.
Because you think more people are going to be out there.
Yeah. And I think more people are just starting to learn about it every year. So it's only going to get more popular. And you kind of see that out west as states add regulations for shed hunting.
Yep.
Like, you can't start until after May 1st, in certain states. And other states you can keep deadheads, and other states you can't.
Yep.
And, so regulations kind of seem to be getting a little tighter progressively as time goes on. And I do like it, though, because I can scout for the fall.
Yeah.
And I can see what deer made it.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking the other day, you and I, about how shed hunting's fun, but it's more fun when you're going after deer that
exactly
are there, or you had on camera, or you haven't quite figured them out yet. Like, let me see where he spends his winter, and that might give me the, missing piece to the puzzle, so I can kill him next fall.
Well, and you and I kind of talked about that too. Like, just a little bit ago, we were looking at some of the deer I have on the wall, and I was telling you, of all the deer I have on the wall, there's only one buck that I actually like filmed in the summer. got pictures of all summer in velvet and killed them. And like the area I actually went in for that deer in Michigan here, only one deer. And, that's like for me, I always like envision that. Like I want history with a deer. I think it like makes it that much cooler. But then like, I've never found a shed of a buck that I've killed, I don't think. Because I've found more sheds out of state. Yeah, I've never found a shed of a buck that I've killed. But I could almost imagine that would be like the pinnacle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you find the shed the year before, and it's like I see these guys like Don Higgins and all these guys that like, has known this deer since he was a yearling, and he's got like 6 sets of sheds. And I'm like, it's to that point, it's almost like, man, like it's almost like cattle now. I feel like you almost like know where the deer is going to be. I know I'm going to kill him. I'm just letting them get older.
Yeah.
I feel like it's.
I do have a weird feeling about that too.
I don't know.
But I still haven't, being in Michigan full time now, I still haven't, found the sheds off of one, nailed down his pattern, and went and killed him. It's
so hard here though. In our area, in your nice situation, I'm not talking for everybody, but to see a deer year after year is difficult. It's difficult just with the hunter pressure we have in the way that food changes all the time and cover and like our winters. Like this year, I wouldn't say our winter's been really hard, but I would say it's been harder than the last couple of winters, and I haven't really seen a lot of deer around.
No, I haven't either. And normally that's like right now with the snow on the ground, we got over a foot of snow right now. I'd say we're, that's what I'm doing right now is driving around, if I get, take the long way home from work or whatever and just try to nail down an area where you're seeing deer. And then, if that's an area that you've already got permission to get on some ground to hunt, great. If it's near some public land, awesome. If not, you can, always ask people to go after, walk their land and, if they're okay with it, that's always an option too.
Well, and this year kind of screwed us too because our fall was so dry. All the farmers got all their crops harvested and turned under. So like there's like no food. So deer are in heavy thermal cover, and browsing like crazy right now. You just don't see deer around us right now out in fields grazing all the time. Like just our fields are all around here anyway, and all the fields that I have access to hunt, like they're all turned under. So the farmers kind of screwed us on that deal.
And I'd say just from like someone that shed hunted a lot last year and is going to do it again this year, the conditions are 180 from what they were last year.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the deer I was, and I'm not seeing any deer in some of the places that had, yarded up deer last year. So but that's part of it, It's just like hunting in the fall. It's always a little bit different variable from year to year, and
for sure
you got to make some changes and you'll find your success.
Yeah. So I want to kind of get into that point there. You were talking about you like to drive around, see where deer yarding up, and then you'll actually go and like try to get permission just to shed hunt it. Like that's what's so cool to me about it. Like for you, you're not necessarily like looking for permission to hunt. You just like love shed hunting so much that you just want to go walk and find antlers. Like that's really cool to me. So like what's your process there, and what made you start thinking about that? That's what you wanted to do. Like maybe I should just go ask this guy if I can just walk his land.
Well, when I first started getting into it, like out by where my dad's property is, he has 50 acres and it butts up to
the best 50 acres in Isabella County.
No.
It's really good.
We do have a lot of neighbors we have one neighbor that owns a large farm, and that draws a ton of deer in the winter. So that would like automatically my dad's place will probably have a couple more antlers on it than any other.
But you've done a lot of habitat improvements though too. Like you guys have done a lot of cover, a lot of hinge cutting, a lot of food improvements that you can hold some deer there.
Yeah, and we cut a lot of timber in 2013, and the following years, like the winters would come and the deer would just come in heavy because all that new browse, all the
popple
old
and
tops,
stuff like that.
Yep. So that really helped. It's hard to find sheds in a fresh cut because there's everything is a stick and looks like a shed.
Yep.
But, so I'm fortunate to be where I'm at as far as like my neighbor will let me walk through his fields and the little bit of woods that he does have, and so that's kind of where I started as far as branching out and actually looking for them. And then my dad grew up on a dairy farm as well, so I thought, hey, I'm finding sheds on this guy's farm. Like, my dad's family farm, that's even further north. I'm
Right.
sure, there's always deer getting hit on the road out front. I'm sure there's sheds laying around there somewhere.
Yeah.
So I've walked that several times looking for them and found a few. And, I've also found a lot of them that are just by happenstance. Like I'm out turkey hunting and, I sit down next to a tree because I hear a bird over there and, they look over and there's one. So,
Yep.
Hey, that's a X to come back next year, like deer wintered here or a deer wintered here and dropped its horns. That's, throw that in the memory bank and come look again next year. And the same goes with mushroom hunting and, everything else you can possibly do outside. You can get lucky and stumble
Right.
across a shed, and that tells you
I feel
a
like
little
you're
bit.
more lucky than a lot of humans that I know, though.
But I have the eye, like
You do.
years ago, I was when I first started, I was the guy that was just like tiptoeing through the woods, like scanning every possible leaf
Yep.
and stick and everything that, where a shed could possibly be. And now I'm to the point where I can I'll just go walk like as fast as I can basically. And, if the conditions are right and you can see a long ways, if something big is laying out there, you're going to see it because,
Yep.
you got the eye and you're, the lighting's correct and all that, which there are a lot of like micro, variables that come into play as far as like, I would much rather walk when it's raining than I would on a, beautiful sunny day.
So I kind of want to get into that because I was talking to Cody last time when, about his shed hunting and stuff and the perfect scenario, like perfect weather conditions. And he has a certain weather condition. Like to you, if you had the perfect shed hunting day, what would it look like?
That would be similar to like the best day you could duck hunt. Like it might be a little windy. It's definitely raining. The clouds are just there all day. It's the same level of light all day. That rain helps everything. First of all, make every leaf look dark brown.
Yep.
And second, it'll, if you get an antler wet, it has a
Kinda
sheen
glows,
to it.
yeah.
So those are the days when you can walk through the woods and anything within, 40, 50 yards of you have it, if it's there, you're going to see it.
Are you so you would prefer a rainy day?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, now what about just like overcast days? Now, obviously when it's raining, it's overcast, but like, what if it's just overcast?
Those are great too. That's a close second.
And then because I mean, there's times where you go in the winter or in the spring, it's like the sun is just beating like for days on end, like it can be.
Mm-hmm.
Like if let's say you have like a high sun day or it's just sunny blue sky, like how are you approaching that day if there's sun?
So I definitely still go. Don't get me wrong there, but when there's a lot of sun, you can walk through the woods and kind of feel where it's warmer, like a deer would. So like going
The
back
thermal
to
changes and
right. So you can, on a day like that, you can walk through the woods and you can hit a little opening and it'll be a little warmer there, and you'll notice that. And I'll just stop and look around then because, if I'm a deer and I got to live outside 24/7, like I'll take that extra 2 degrees in that little opening in the sun, and that's a great spot to just lay down and bask in the sun. Like, you've seen them, like they'll find a good sunny spot and just lay up because it's comfortable, and a lot of times that's where they drop their antlers in the winter.
So I kind of want to tell everybody a little story that happened to me and Mitch last year, and I got really pissed at him for it. But we were walking my family farm. It was you, me, my wife, my daughter, and we walked the whole farm. It's like 217 acres. I shouldn't say the whole farm. We walked quite a bit that day. I mean, it was like an 18-pack of Bush Light that day.
Oh, yeah.
It was
It was a long walk.
And we don't find a ton of sheds up there, but the most sheds that we do find are like by happenstance, like turkey hunting, like you said, or just driving around. One might be in the hayfield, it's like, so we're walking all day and just having a good day. It was a nice sunny day, no snow on the ground. And we're walking and Mitch goes, Aaron, come over here. And I said, don't tell me, Mitch, you didn't find one. You didn't find, and I just kept yelling at him like, you didn't find it. He's like, just walk right at me. Walk right at me. And that mother scratcher found a shed. And so I want to kind of paint a picture for this thermal thing. And this is when he kind of like told me about this. And this was a huge learning point for me. But like, if you can imagine like autumn olive bushes, like Russian olives, like these just gnarly shit bushes, but they are good for like cover, I would think. But we were in oak, like a rolling oak ridge, and there's autumn olives all around. And this is when Mitch told me, he's like, literally, I was walking through here and he could feel the temperature change. And I'm like, okay, now you're just talking out of your ass. But you could. Like, he's like walking this little area. And I'm not kidding you. This area was 3 foot by 3 foot. It wasn't even that big.
Yeah, it was just a spot where autumn olive could grow because the sun could hit it and the oaks hadn't choked it out yet.
Yeah, and just so happened my 2-year-old daughter, she had to go in and get it because we couldn't even crawl in there to get it because it was so thick. But, like, it was crazy when you were, like, the thermals changed. So, like, when I feel that thermal change on my body, he's like, I just start scanning right here. And I'm like, okay, that's something that, like, that's a key little piece of information there.
If you are familiar with hunting mushrooms at all, it's kind of the same thing. Like, you just get in an area and you're kind of like, yeah, this looks like, it's, more moisture or whatever. There's a dead elm. Like, I got to just stop and look around. It's that same kind of intuition that, like, okay, conditions are pretty good right here.
Is it kind of like when you like are swimming and you come to a warm spot in the water where somebody peed?
Yeah, definitely.
Kind of the same thing.
Exactly.
She's like, oh, well, I wonder who, wonder what I'm in here.
Something was here.
No, and that was like really cool to be able to, like, those are like the little nuances that I never thought of. It's like, to me, growing up and everybody's like, oh, shed hunting, like you just get some buddies who go walk around, grid search it and just walk around, look for food, look for bedding. Mm-hmm. But really what's cool to me about you and like Cody that I recorded with, like, you guys take it a step further. Like, it's like, these little, I almost feel like when you probably like that, like registered and you're like, oh, it's warmer right here. It's like the why, like that's the why I'm talking about. Like, you're, maybe I should look right here. If I was a deer, I'd hang out right here. And you're probably finding sheds like crazy in those areas. Like like you said, you found a shed at my place. So.
Yeah. And like another area that kind of comes to mind with that is like, if you can picture like the south side of a bunch of pine trees and there's snow on the ground still, but near those pine trees, there's no snow.
Yep. Because
the sun hits there, they, reflect the heat or whatever they do to warm the ground. And that's another one of those situations where it's like, if I was a deer, I would be right on this south edge. Yep. There's my, thermal cover. Here's my sunshine. If there's a little food there, even better. But that's another area where, like, same kind of intuition comes. Like, I better walk through here because, this just looks like the spot that a deer would hang out in the sun.
Do you go with your gut more than with what you hear people doing with their shed hunting? You know what I mean? Like, if you hear, you read and you hear and you watch all these people doing different things, and it's not just shed hunting. It could be hunting or, whatever it is. But do you go with your gut more than, like, this guy does this? It's so, like, how do you manage that?
I go with my gut more, and I kind of apply what I have read or heard, and where it applies. I'll use it, but it's hard to, like, you almost got to just get out there and see where there are sheds. Just like, where there's big bucks, you can, that's where you want to hunt.
Yep, right.
So where I'm seeing deer in the winter is where I look. It doesn't matter. Like, that could be a parking lot, and no one's talked about that in a podcast, but, like, if there's deer there, that's...
Have you ever found a shed in a parking lot?
I have not. I found one on the road, but...
Really?
Yeah.
Like, just on a main road?
A dirt road, but you could tell where one came down off a hill, hit the ditch, and dumped them, and then took off up the hill on the other side. I found a small set like that.
You
can I mean, you can find them from your vehicle if you
road
drive
sheds.
around
I've heard
enough.
road sheds are the best.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, that's kind of interesting because I see a lot of people post them online. It's like, should you go out in that field and pick up that antler? Or,
Yikes.
I always try. Like, I'll go ask anyone if I can pick something up, especially if I see it right in their yard or on their property. That's the right thing to do is ask. So that's always the best bet. But that people find them all over. I know just people that work outside all the time find them more than most, and it's interesting when, like, because like anything, you can read about it, but then you got to apply it to your particular situation.
You got to kind of strip it down and like feel like, to me, I feel like I need to try it, and then if it doesn't work, maybe not throw it to the wolves, but like remember that, and then maybe fine tune it from there. Does that make sense? Like, do that?
Yeah, it's kind of like I've thrown the idea of hunting deer over a decoy in Michigan to the wolves, but I've listened to you talk about what you do
really
to make it work.
Success over it, yeah.
So I'll apply that. But like, just because I read an article about someone having success with a decoy doesn't necessarily translate to my situation. So sheds can be the same way. Like, you could live on a dairy farm and have 200 deer coming into your bunk silo every night, and like, that's your shed hunting situation. They might be laying in your driveway or and then other guys might only have access to public land, and that's what they do is put the miles on and just go look where and when they can. Yeah.
Well, and I've been kind of talking to you. Can I get another beer real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Before I'm getting a little parched here. I been kind of talking to you about it. The last couple winters, you and I know an area behind some timber, or behind a certain area where there's been a lot of deer yarding up, and I'm really good friends with the people that own the land, and they let us ride snowmobiles through their land and all that stuff, and I see 30, 40 deer run out of this section. Doesn't matter. I mean, how many? They just yard up back there in the winter every year. It seems like. This year they're not yarding up back there. I don't see a deer back there, and I'm like, well. So then I told you about this the other day. I was like, I asked myself why. Like, why aren't they there? Like, I'm not seeing them like I have in the past, and adjacent to this timber. Now this timber, to kind of give you a picture, is like little gradual rolling hills, but there's no thermal cover in it. It's just barren trees. It's popple. It's oak trees. It's maples. It's just like a variation. There's really no cover in it, but there is some topography changes. What I found out though, and when I asked myself why, there is a big stand of pine trees, thermal cover, that's adjacent to this timber. I kind of did my little tour through there and found out that the deer have migrated to that thermal cover. And then I asked myself why, and it's, well, last year our winter wasn't nothing. Right. The year before our winter wasn't nothing. This year, like I said, we don't have a hard winter, but it's been harder than the last couple of years, and those deer just kind of like move right over there. And there is deer sign. I didn't push in there not yet, because I don't want to push the deer out of there. Yep. You know what I mean? I want to wait, and then I've already got permission. You and I can go in and walk that. I want to see if anything's back there. I mean, there's tons of deer tracks, tons of deer sign. If there's any antlers, we'll find them. It's kind of like, if you can picture like kind of pine trees just periodically sprayed in a CRP field. It's kind of what it is. Okay. So we need to, once the snow starts melting, we need to get back there. So, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, just that, ask yourself, like, if you have a scenario, it might change year to year. Like, I've just never had anything in any instance where it's like year after year, it just keeps working. So I don't know.
Right. I feel like we're in kind of a, like an area. Oh, you're drooling beer.
I got a hole in my lip.
We are in an area where there's a lot of variables like that, whereas if you go to the UP, you can basically bank on the deer migrating to the same like yarding area every winter. And the opposite of that is, like, if you're listening to this right now in, Missouri or anywhere further south, really, like, you might have a buck that just literally lives on your property all the time, and you will find his sheds there. Here we're probably like most people, we're in between those two extremes where, the weather might push the deer out of my woods and over closer to the farm where, there's just feed laying on the ground from their livestock operation.
Yep.
But then other years, the browse that's in my woods might get them by, and they'll be there. And like I already showed you, the one that I found last week.
How many sheds have you ever found to this point right now?
Just the one.
Just the one?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Rough. That's hard.
Yeah,
hard.
It's been a tough year. No, on that one, so that's a crazy story too. I just got to share this because we had a birthday party out at our property for my dad. So we're all out there. I haven't left the property all day. I'm walking around at the end of the night trying to find my wallet. And I'm like,
lost your wallet.
Oh my God, it's got to be in the snow somewhere. This sucks. Like, do I cancel all my cards? And then I'll probably come out here shed hunting and find it laying there once the snow's gone. So I'm looking all over, don't find it. Like 2 days go by and I know it's out there. And so I go out there with my wife and my mom, and we're looking all over and just talking it out, Where was the last place you had it? What'd you do after that? Well, my mom's like, one time I lost my phone and it got folded up in a camp chair and it stayed right in the cup holder. So we start rifling through all the chairs. I had 2 in my truck out at the road, so my wife went out there. She sure as hell finds my wallet in a chair folded up in my truck. So I'm walking up to her at the front gate, basically, like 10 yards from the front gate. She meets me, and then my mom was walking up the trail, so we were just basically waiting to all walk out to the road together. Well, I look over, and like 10 feet from us, this shed's just laying there in the snow. And it might even been hit by the plow. My cousin came and plowed our trail so we could get in there. And this shed's just laying there, and it's like, what are the odds of that? Like, so, yeah, okay, you're probably right. I get lucky.
Really lucky. Really lucky. I want to kind of go back to talk about how things change in our area. And like Mitch said, we're not – if you live out in Illinois, Kansas, Iowa, wherever, Missouri – you can have those deer that are living there year after year and the same things happening. We're just kind of talking specifically for our area right now. And it just feels like everything evolves every year. Like the little minute thing would happen and it would change, and it's like a big change. So I want to talk about a mutual person that we know that shot a really big deer around here. You found the sheds on your farm, right?
Yep.
So you found the sheds the year before they killed that deer. How far was that from where he killed the deer?
I believe it was about 4 miles.
Straight as a crow flies, right?
3 or 4 miles. 3.5 miles, I believe, as a crow flies.
So, like, that year, like, take me through that, like, your thought process of that. You found that deer. I mean, that deer was, what, like 155, 156, or he ended up scoring or something like that. You found the set, right?
So I'll take it back even further. That spring, I put a camera out. Like I always try to put a camera out on my birthday because it's June 30th. So I put a camera out on July 4th. I had that deer on camera going presumably back to where he spends his falls with enough rack that you could tell it was the same 3 to 4 miles away.
Okay.
Yep. That fall, it was very visible over where it was lived. And that winter, it came back and dumped its antlers back at our place. So I had it on camera. It left. It came back, dropped its antlers, then left, the next season and was killed that fall.
You never had pictures of it that fall, the year before it was killed. So let's kind of lay this out. So let's call it its 3-year-old year.
Yeah.
So a 3-year-old year, you had pictures of it in June.
Yep.
Okay.
I had one picture of it.
One picture?
Yep.
Okay, so he leaves. You never see it again until you find the sheds of it.
Right. And I spent a lot of time planting turnips and everything. I thought late season, like if it's, God willing, we get a ton of snow and maybe he'll get pushed back here before our season closes January 1st and maybe I'll get a crack at him. But, that was kind of my idea and obviously never saw him.
And then 4 years old comes around, the year he gets shot. I'm just saying 4 years old. I think he's probably 4-year-old. It could have been a 5-year-old. But the year he got shot, Did you get any pictures of them that year?
Nope. Had none.
So then you're coming into that year probably thinking that deer's dead. Well,
I had
guess
the
not
sheds.
because you had the sheds, yeah.
I had one picture of it, never saw it in the fall, and found the sheds and haven't seen it since.
So you're coming into the year thinking like, man, this is going to be, I got a stud here.
Yeah, right.
That's going to be living here. Never saw him again. Then he gets killed 3 to 4 miles away.
Yeah.
See, that's crazy to me,
So that shift happens every year, though, out there. In our neighborhood, our little neighborhood, depending on the crops, and most years it's like this year where they get the crops off and flip all the dirt they can, and now the deer have to go maybe 3 or 4 miles to find food, and that happened to be what this situation was.
That's crazy.
He left and went where all the other deer were to find food.
Yep. So now let's get into when you do start to go shed hunt a piece. Let's say it's a piece that you've never been on. No, let's say it's a piece that you've shed hunted before. It could be your property. Okay. Are you going right to like the high percentage places where they might be shedding, i.e. food or thermal cover? Are you going right to that first, or like how are you picking apart a piece of property?
So if it's the first time I've been on a piece of property, I'll just give it the speed tour, if you've heard that phrase before. So I'll go just zigzag and try to cover, obviously look at a map before, and if there's like road pine trees, I'll probably stay away from those, I'll stay in the thickest stuff, the best deer habitat basically is what I'm looking for. And that's what I follow around. And if I know that there's a big buck in there, that's when I start to
really comb it.
Grid search is what people,
when you're grid searching, like if you make a run from like, let's just call it east to west so people can understand. Mm-hmm. Let's say you're going from east to west. When you turn back and go back east, like how far are those strips apart? Are you 20 yards? Are you 30 yards? Are you 10 yards?
Kind of whatever I feel comfortable as far as how far I can see.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it because I've done that in a cornfield, and I'll go 8 rows or whatever, and just enough where I can see, but at a certain point the stubble kind of sticks up and can mess with you. So that situation is different than walking through one spot I find them in is just basically tag alders. So that is a lot closer proximity. There's a lot, if you're familiar with alders, they basically come out of the ground and just explode into a bunch of different stems. So there could be a shed 10 feet from you in there, and you might not see it unless
you almost got to stumble on it.
Right. So if it's real thick, I spend more time.
Okay.
If it's wide open, I'll just give it a quick breeze through, and anything in between, I basically just grid it based on what I feel comfortable as far as I can see. So.
Yep. Now, when you're scanning the ground, how are you scanning the ground? Because like you said, you have an eye for it. I don't have an eye for it. I almost have to go out and throw sheds, in the yard or something like that, and be like, okay, there they are. You know what I mean? Okay, now we can go, And I do the same thing when we're mushroom hunting, too. I can never find mushrooms. And it's almost look through them or look over them. How do you get your eye trained for that?
First of all, I started looking for if you take your hand and just hold it up, you've got 5 fingers sticking straight up.
Yep.
That's a lot of times how a shed will hit the ground, and especially a big one. It'll be sticking straight up where you can see, a G2 and a G3. So a lot of times I'll just picture finding that perfect, 5-point side laying there face up, just tines to the air, and that's what I look for. And the flip side of that is the U shape that an antler looks like when it hits the ground,
like
tines
a horseshoe
down.
Kind of.
Yeah. So I look for both of those, and that's a pretty good start. But there's some other times where, especially around here, there's a lot of small deer.
Right.
Anything that looks like a rib bone, I'll go look at, because
really,
I'm not lying. I probably have 30 spikes at my house.
Really?
Yeah. I have a full set off of a spike that's probably 4 inches long. Yeah. I'll have to show that to you. But you never know what's going to be an antler.
Right.
I found one a couple of years ago that looked like a root of a cedar, and it was under a cedar. And I went over and checked it just to put my mind at ease, and sure enough, it was an antler, and it was one of those ones where it was damaged, and it came up, and the brow developed, and was like, it was basically a 10-inch brow tine that split, and then the rest of the main beam was just a drop tine that went about 5 inches.
No kidding.
And the way that thing was laying, you would never think it was an antler. On that one in particular, on like deer in Michigan anyways, a lot of them have a darker frame, and the tips will be a little more
white,
polished
like lighter.
up.
Yep,
yeah.
Yep.
So like on that one in particular, I remember seeing like, that looks like an antler tip, but that shape is so weird it can't be an antler. So on that one in particular, I actually kind of noticed the tip of the antler.
Okay.
And how the color, if it looks like an antler, go check it out.
Yep.
And that's why guys carry binoculars, is because.
Do you do binoculars?
I don't all the time, and it might be kind of laziness or a pride thing. Like, I just like to get out there and walk and see them, but they have helped me. So.
Okay. So basically what you're saying is if you see something and you have like a thought in your mind, like you should go check it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like always go check it.
Every time. If you're like, there's just some stupid ways to find sheds. If you're taking a leak out there, just stop and look around, and you might get lucky and see one. But always look for those 4 sticking up, or the horseshoe, or the tip of the tine. If it's raining or if it's any sort of dew on the ground, the glow of the antler, like once you have all that in your head, it's easy to know what you're looking for.
Yeah. What's the craziest shed you've ever found? As far as like not character wise, but like, up in a tree 10 foot, like that kind of craziness, like on a railroad bed or something like.
That one in Illinois that was like under 3 or 4 years of switchgrass laying over it from the snow. That was pretty cool. I've found ones just hanging in alders like 3 or 4 feet off the ground where you can tell a buck was just kind of probably nibbling, the buds on the tree, and the antler fell off and got stuck up off the ground. I've broken a couple out of ice. That one I actually had to come back in the spring and get it because it was in some like a muckier area where it was like a floodplain basically, and there was a lot of cedars. So I was like, okay, cedars, deer in our neighborhood eat cedars in the winter, so that's a great spot to start looking. And I just happened to find an oldie that had gotten down in the mud, and all I could see was a tine, and had to come out in the spring and actually collect it.
I gotcha.
But
how many? Okay, so I'm gonna start hitting you with a little rapid fire here. How many sheds have you found in a day? What was your best day?
22 on 40 acres, which it sounds
on
impossible.
40 acres?
Yeah, it was
what
just
state?
Michigan. It was just a dump.
Jesus.
It was like the whole herd just said, we're dropping them here.
How many sets did you find?
4.
4 sets?
Yeah.
What the hell?
That was when I first, so that was like the second year after I'd come back from Illinois and moved to Michigan full time, and like that was just too good to be true, and I knew it, and I know I'll never come close
you
to
had a rabbit's foot so far lined
up
your t-shirt.
Yeah.
Jeez, dude.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then then you'll walk 20 miles and not find a single one.
That's the thing, like the head game, man. It's like I feel like it's always a big like up and down ebbs and flows. Like you could walk all winter and not find a shed, and then you find the biggest shed of your life, one shed that year, and it's like, oh, well, that.
And right next to it's the other one. It's like, how does that work? Like,
what's the biggest shed you've ever found? Side.
That set that we're referring to, it was a.
Oh yeah. Yep.
It was I think it was a 12. So it had 7 scoreable on one side and 5 clean on the other.
That's right.
And those ones were about 30 yards apart. And I found the big clean 5 side first, and then I looked over and the other one was.
What were you thinking then?
What the hell deer is this? And I had the picture of the one, of that deer from the summer, and didn't think anything of it until, I went down that rabbit hole at my house on my laptop and, kind of started putting the pieces together as far as like, oh my gosh, actually I did have a pretty big buck on camera in July that I never, thought twice about because I never saw it again. And sure enough, I look at it. It's got the same split on the brow and the same 5 going on one side, and it hadn't had the split G2 on the left side yet, but it was obviously the same deer. So now, okay, like, how can I plan this fall to kill that deer? Like, obviously, I'm only on 50 acres surrounded by ag, so I'm going to need some serious late season food if this thing wasn't, if it wasn't hitting your food in the summer at my place, normally what we see in the summer is what hangs out in the fall. We don't really get, seems like we don't really get
I agree.
The
transition
freak buck that just shows up in the rut. So, shed hunting has that benefit as far as, if you're shed hunting where you, even in the neighborhood of where you are able to hunt, you can use the information that you find from finding a shed or just seeing where deer yard up to plan your next fall.
Did you find that shed on, like, was it food or cover? Like, what did you find that on?
Cover.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah. Right under a pine tree. Like,
no kidding. Like
it was
like
laying
in a bed?
There. Probably. Yeah. But they were about 30 yards apart, so, he probably dumped one and walked a couple of feet and shook the other one off or whatever. But
do you see that a lot, though, too, like with sheds? Like, how many sets have you found? Do you know that number? If you had to take a guess.
Probably 13, 15 sets, somewhere in there.
And are you finding, like, in a lot of those sets, are you finding them within a certain range that day? Or are you finding a lot of, like, you find one, then you go back, and you're like, oh, I found another one. Like, oh, it's the same deer. Like, how's that work?
So when I'll find a side, and I assume the other one's close, especially if it's big. It seems like, from my experience, a bigger
they don't
deer,
like that feeling on their head or something. They just can't get it off.
Or they have more weight, and they just, I don't know exactly how they, why they dump at the same time, but it seems like bigger deer just seem to shake them off at the same time. So, like, I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
No, like, so, like, if you're finding a set, so, like, in all the sets that you found, are you finding them mostly, like, when you find one, you're, like, looking around, you find the other, or is it more like you find one and then you might find another one on another property, or, like, how's that?
So normally I'll find, if it's a big deer, I'll find both of them, like, fairly close to each other. The extreme of that is, like, my neighbor out in Wademan found one probably, like, between a quarter and a half a mile from where I found the other one.
Okay.
And
so you found one and he found one.
Yeah, and mine was actually up in a autumn olive branch.
Okay.
And it was just beautiful. His was laying on the ground and got all chewed up by the squirrels. So it was always kind of a joke between us. But so there's, like, that where, and there's times where I've found nice sheds and not found the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've had days where I've found, like, 6 or 7 right sides.
Really?
And it's like, they're all shedding here. Like, I've looked on this whole area. Why am I not finding the match? Right. But normally you'll find, like, I'd say when I find a shed, I'm like 50-50. I'll find the other side within 100 yards. Yeah.
Really?
Just from my experience.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
that's pretty cool because, you see a lot of people just finding, obviously, just onesie twosies kind of thing. Like, you find one and, and that's, like, something unique to me, like, because we don't get to see that. Like, a lot of people don't get to see that of, like, deer shed an antler and then it's like, when's the other one pop off or where's it at, So that's pretty neat. Like, that's, and I don't know enough about how deer shed their antlers to be like, well, the right one's ready to pop off, but the left one's not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the right one might be just, like, ready, like a loose tooth, is like one. I don't know.
I kind of assume that when one's ready to go, the other one's ready to go. But I think that's kind of a mystery to everyone. How
I'm sure a biologist could tell us or something.
And some people probably see deer on camera with carrying one side for days, and it's like, why does that happen?
Yeah.
But going back to when you find that first side, like, that's when I really dive in, and, like, grid search is kind of a good term for what I do once I find that one side, because I've been burned by, I found the side that was just laying up perfect, and then next year I went through that same spot and I found the other one that was buried under pine needles, and all you could see was, like, a few, inches of antlers sticking up, and that one, I always refer back to that one as like, you know, I need to be persistent around, like, especially in the media area.
Do your due diligence and just like look a little harder, and
that's when you kind of start, you know,
kick
looking
yourself
in
in the
trees
ass, like,
and
damn
flipping rocks over trying to find the other side. Because when I came through there the next year, I looked at that one and I'm like, how did I miss that? Like, I should have been in here, like, you know, fine tooth combing through here a little more.
Well, we're coming up on time here. I do got a couple rapid fire left for you. So like, what where do you find most of your sheds? And what I mean by that, I want to generalize it a little bit. Is it mostly food, cover, transition, you know, fence rows? Like, where do you find most of your sheds?
So around us, I've found that there's all those variables, and when you can get all those variables focused in the smallest area possible, that's where I have my most success. So, like, around here, especially lately, it's been super cold. There's not a lot of open water.
Yep.
And this is the time of year when deer are dropping their antlers, so they're probably going to be near open water.
Okay.
And they'll go, like, we were talking about that other buck. He went miles, you know, to get to the right conditions. So I always try to hone in on those areas where it's like, man, this is a green wheat field, and there's a huge stand of, like, Norway spruces next to it that all have the bottom branches on them still that really break the wind. And, man, right behind it, there's, you know, a river or a spring or something that they can gain access to water through.
Yep.
And, like, that's an area where there's going to be deer just, like, they won't leave that area for weeks probably because they don't have to. Nothing's pushing them out. And that's another point is don't, you know, if you see 20 or 30 deer hanging out in that little stand of pines like you were talking, don't go in there in January and
just start pushing them.
Yeah.
Wait for the conditions to be right.
Right, because where there's that many deer, there's multiple bucks, and normally it seems like from what I've seen, like when, like, deer in a certain herd, like when a few of them start to drop, it's kind of a, you know, most of them drop situation. Yep. So, like, if you can just stay out of an area and go in there, you know, middle of March once the snow's gone and everything's still laid down, like, you'll find success for sure.
Okay. I like that. So, like, are you taking note of, like, right now you talk about there's not a lot of water open, so are you taking note of that, like, once the snow starts melting and everything, that's, like, some of the first places you're going is, like, open water?
Yeah.
Or around water sources or anyway.
Yeah, especially this year because it's been, you know, below zero every night, and a lot of those little irrigation ditches and, you know, people's ponds, even if there is a spring or whatever, like, that'll all be closed up. So, you know, February is the time when most deer are going to drop, I would say. And sometimes, you know, it's like anything in life, it's a bell curve for the most part. So there might be one or two in December and January, and then most of them in February and early March, and then a few will, you know, some guys see them with antlers during turkey season. Yep. But, you know, if you can just take a snapshot of where the deer are in the middle of February, I would say that's a great spot to start your, you know, as far as a strategy of where to look. So, but yeah, open water right now is kind of what I've been paying attention to.
So just put that in the memory bank and just kind of go back to that when time's right then.
Especially as I see, like I told you, I'm not seeing deer in certain areas that I have in previous winters, and it's like this year water is probably the limiting factor.
I would agree with that. It's been so cold and everything's froze right now. So, so I guess the last question I have for you is if you had 1 to 2 quick elevator pitch deals to tell someone to be successful, what they need to do in shed hunting, what is the Mitch Reetz thing that you would tell them to do?
Spend all the time that you can outside, whether it's turkey hunting, mushroom hunting, deer hunting. You know, just like I told you, we had a party out in the woods and I found one. Like, just get out there as much as you can. I really put a lot of weight into just like driving around and seeing where deer are. Also, don't overlook small spots like, you know, parks and, you know, just
you found 22 sheds on 40 acres. That's pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, that's and that'll never happen again, I'm sure. Yeah. But that's like, you gotta be out there. You gotta be looking for deer. You gotta be paying attention to them.
Just get out and do some walking, basically.
Yeah, and look for your sign for next year. That's a great way to, you're out there bumping around and, oh my gosh, you hit 20 or 30 deer blew out of there. That's a great spot to come back and look for sheds. So,
good deal, man. Well, I'm gonna wrap this up. I appreciate you coming on and doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm gonna basically be on your shirt tails all spring for shed hunting.
Let's do it.
And I was telling Cody, I think, I don't know if I was telling him off record or if we were recording, I can't remember, but I basically said, if I come shed hunt with you, I'm not going to let you out of my sight. I'm just, if you're like, and I'm going to like stop you, like, nope, I'm going to get that.
Yeah.
You don't get any sheds. I'm a shed hawk.
We'll do a guided shed hunt.
There you go. There you go. Well, cool, man. I appreciate you coming on and doing this. Thank you very much. And, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure, man.